Hey everybody, back here in the shop, show you a little bit about what's going on. This video here I want to do in regards to putting power windows on a race car. Something that I've done a couple times here, and honestly it works pretty darn well. Of course I'm using Lexan. Like I say, this is a race car, so I'm using Lexan for windows, 3/16 Lexan that I got from Stock Car Steel and Aluminum, in some other parts and pieces. So what I'll do is I'll get on this video right away and show you what's going on, what I did. In Scott Rod's cars, he doesn't send the doors assembled, so it makes putting window channels and everything else in the door a lot easier. You get all that done first, get the door where you want it, or the inner structure where you want it, and then glue the skin on. We've not done that yet, so this will give me a good opportunity to show you what I've done with this door, how I hung them. So here we go. Okay, you can see all this stuff here. First thing I want to start with is what I did. I figured out where to get the door in the car, and I did that by taping some 3/16 flat stock to the rocker to hold the door inner structure up like 3/16 off the rocker. And then I centered this thing in the opening, cut it fit, centered it in the opening, and I set all the margins tight. You can see I've got them right tight there in the quarter panel, because once it's all glued together, then I'll make these margins 3/16, make them all fit good. So I got all that done. Then it came up here. I'll show you this stuff a little bit. This is how I do my hinges. It's a piece of 3/4 inch tubing with a piece of 3/8 rod welded on the end. I always make the bottom pin taller than the top pin so you can get the door mounted on there easier, because these doors are completely removable. Those plates are 2x3 1/8 inch flat stock. I drill 4/4 inch holes in them to mount them. And on a steel car like Jerry Dean's car over here, show you this, I'll just mount them where the existing hinge is mounted here. I'll mount those plates right there and then make an inner plate so they're adjustable. This car here didn't have none of that, so what we'll end up doing is we'll end up drilling those holes out a little bit, like a 32nd or more, just to give it a little bit of adjustment when we're all said and done. So on the inside of that, I made a plate and I tack welded my nuts on there, and I used a piece of 3/4 inch tubing to hold that plate on the inside. I'm accomplishing two things here. What I'm doing is I'm holding that A-pillar in place so that the door won't bust up the A-pillar, and then also giving a place for the hinge to mount. So two things you're looking for when you're doing this. And before I go there, I put the hinges where the original hinges were in the door best I could. So you can see the recess. I think you can see the recess in the door there where I put that plate. Okay, when I get that far, before I mount those tubes, the tubes are the last thing I do. I build the door hinges. Okay, I've got the plates on the A-pillar. I've got the plates mounted on the car. They're 1/8 inch flat stock as well. And I know the car's level. I've got it sitting on my jack stands. I've plumbed and leveled and everything else. So then what I do is I set my laser up out here on the outside of the door, and I put a perfectly plumb line on the door as a reference, so I know where to mount my hinges. The reason why you want to do that, you want them plumb front to back and side to side, is so when the door swings open, it don't flop open or flop close on you all the time. If the pins are perfectly plumb with each other, the door will stay where you open it. So if that makes any sense to you, I hope it does. But that's really important when you're hanging doors, is to get the pins plumb with each other. And as you can see, like that one there is really close to the outside of the door. You have to have that as well. It's got to be as close to the door skin as you can get it to make the door swing in the opening right. Like high crown doors like Corvettes and stuff like that, they're really tough to do. It takes a special hinge to do that, and you just got to know how to do it. You got to watch. So Anyways, once I get that figured out, then I'll take my hinges back off and use that reference mark, and then I'll weld that upper plate on the hinge for the pin. I put those on at 90 degrees to that parallel line I drew on the hinges on both of them. So, I mean, you can see those plates there. Then I take that piece of tube, I'll flatten the end out a little bit, and then weld that pin on there. That's the top, and that's the bottom. You can see the size of the pins, the difference in pins, and basically all I did here, like I say, a piece of 3/8 rod welded on the end of that 3/4 inch tubing. Okay, once I get that done, I've got the door in the hole where I want it, clamped in place. Then I'll cut to fit those tubes and TIG weld them to those plates. I'll just tack them and take them off. I won't TIG weld it against the fiberglass because it burns up. It'll burn up the fiberglass, I should say. Then I put on there that's called a blow-off clip right there. That keeps the doors from falling off the car when they're closed. I've seen race cars before where guys don't pull them clips on and they'll go out and rattle the tires and shake the door right off the car, or have them blow off at the racetrack. I'm sure you probably watch some videos where guys' doors will blow off. That's because they don't have that little clip right there. Anywho, back to the window. What I've done here is I've used a piece of metal channel here that I bought from Scott Rods. Scott Rods fiberglass. Scott built this Henry J body. That's what he does for a living, build bodies. Lots of street rods, so they put a lot of windows in cars like this. So here recently I thought, man, if I got to put windows in this car, we might as well make them power. And the reason why I say that is because the only real good regulators you used to be able to buy were from Freightliner trucks that have that cable type system, and they don't make them anymore. So power windows is the way to go. And when you're in a hot race car, come back up the return road, man, it's nice to be able to roll the windows down, especially from the driver's seat. So what I did is I got this channel and I notched it along this area in here, or I should say I had Ronnie notch it for me, along this area to get it to fit the contour of the door. You can see some grind marks in it and stuff like that. How we got all this stuff put in here. And then what we did is we made sure that this channel was perfectly parallel with this channel right here. So they're like 35 inches apart outside to outside. We got that done, and then we cleat-coated into the door frame, made sure everything fit, and then we riveted the top edge. This is all riveted through the fiberglass into the metal frame. Okay, that's in place. Then what I did is built these, I think you can see them, these little stiffeners here. There's like a mount there that bolts in, and then one here. And then I've got the same thing down on that end there too. There's 4 of those. And the reason why I did that is because typically when a race car at speed creates a vacuum inside the car, just from the wind passing it, and it wants to always suck the tops of the doors out. And that was one of my main considerations here, was keeping the doors in the car when it was going down the track. So that's why, another reason why I built this frame the way I did. Typically they just run these 2 vertical pieces and then run the window up and down, and they'll rivet this channel here to the fiberglass, but I didn't want that. I wanted something that will help hold the door together a little bit, and it'll add some strength to it once the skin is on too. Then what I did is put this fuzzy channel in, which I also got from Scott Rods. They're over in Monroeville, Ohio, over near Summit. So Scott builds a lot of cars, so I used his advice heavily doing these windows. Put that channel in there, then I cut a cardboard pattern that would allow me to lower the window all the way down and keep as much of this vertical on the sides as I could to help hold the window square as it went up and down. So this channel will go all the way down, and the window will like just barely, it just sticks up a tiny bit. I didn't want it to go all the way inside the door. When it's down, it gets stuck, so it'll stick up about 1/8 of an inch in the back. Okay, I got the pattern done, and then I cut this piece of Lexan. Like I say, it's 3/16 Lexan. Cut it to fit, sanded it, and I rounded these edges out here so that it'll slide in this rubber channel a little bit. And I also radiused the bottom corners, okay, so that they weren't hanging, like the corner wasn't hanging in that fuzzy welting. And you can see here it's in and out a little bit. It's not glued in. I just have it setting in there temporarily so that I could make the windows work. Then what I did is I mounted this regulator, and it was super simple. The regulators we got from Scott Rods too, but you can buy them from Yogi's. They sell the same thing. It's a flat glass regulator for street rods. And all I did is there's a mount, you can't hardly see it, I'm gonna try. There's a mount on the bottom right there. I drilled a hole in the door. And how I did that is I centered that regulator between the back and the front channels. I perfectly centered it and made it parallel with those channels. Then what you're doing is you're trying to make this piece here travel in the same plane as that metal channel. You want it to go in the same plane so it's not bending the window around. So once I got that done, I was able to mount the motor. It's mounted down there with a couple little screws. And there's a screw in the top too. I put like an 832 screw through the fiberglass. I don't know, you might be able to see it from this side. Just to hold that. Okay. And as you can see, I've got a handle in there. The hole needs a little bit of work yet, but basically I'm just trying to make the door work. That little handle will open and close the door, and I will also cut a slot in the window so that you can open that from the outside. I have not done that yet, but I sort of needed to get the window in the opening so I knew where to cut the hole. Then back here, and they're hard to see, I put in a regular bear claw latch. That's what they had. Usually I use mini bear claws or bear jaws, whatever they call them. That's fit behind that channel. And then there's a wire rod that goes up to that handle so you can open the door and close the door. Now I have not drilled the hole for the pin for that latch in the body because I wanted the doors glued and fit. You want the doors to swing open and close right in the opening before you put that pin in. You don't want to have to lift the door up or none of that stuff. So one other thing I did here, and I'm sure you could see them in the video, is I used some 1/2-inch plywood in here to help stiffen up the fiberglass to add some strength, give it like a little bit better load bearing. And I'll glue them in before we glue the panel in, or the body skin on. So as you can see, we roughed up the edges. They're cleaned up. We got to do a little bit more work to flatten it out a little bit more, but you got to grind that fiberglass down so it'll stick to each other. The outer door skin's the same way. We ground it on the inside, and like I say, we're to the point now where basically we'll put some glue on there and a couple ratchet straps and we should be good to go. The only other thing I have to do, I've not done yet, is add door checks. You have to have a way with this type of car, removable doors, so the doors don't fly open too far and scratch up the paint or hit somebody else's car. So I'll build some 1/4-inch loops. One will weld on the roll bar, the A-pillar bar, then the other one will bolt onto the door itself, and we use like a quick disconnect catch just to get it loose. So like I say, you can see from the inside on that door how it's put together. Hopefully the lighting's good enough. Like I say, I'm a low-tech redneck, so you're getting to see what I have to offer unedited. So here we are. Power windows in a drag car. Who'd have thought? Most guys would have just riveted the Lexan in, but we're trying to be just like one step above. And like I say, I'm not reinventing the wheel. This is something that Scott Leber does all the time. Scott and Zach do this, and every car they build, they use glass. I using Lexan here for driver safety. So where we're at with the doors. I just wanted you guys to see that before I glued the skins on and let you know what I had going on. Jerry Dean's car, we got all the fiberglass in the other day, and the front end's just sort of setting on there. I needed to double check my wheelbase with the front end on to make sure I was doing everything right, because Southeast Gassers, they only allow 1 inch of variance in wheelbase. So I wanted to double check that and make sure my frame rails were right, and now I can get back on that. This coming week I'll get back on putting the front frame rails in and mounting the spring perches and showing you a video on that. That way I can start putting the roll bar in this thing and getting after it. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.